check that we're going, which we seem to be. So we can forget about that now.
All right.
So tell me about this photo, the one in the news, because that's fascinating.
I think that they're Germans.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two Italians, because the Italians did dig the Reens, I'm told, down on Whitmore and Northmore. And the men in the photograph have got German army hats on, and they do look like Germans. And I think they did a lot of work on the coast between Stolford and Hinkley Point.
I remember you said when I was up here that the coast used to erode a lot more before Hinkley. Was that what they were working with?
No, they were down from there. They were between Hinkley and Stolford, where it's very flat. But the coastal erosion that I was shown in 1955 was where Hinkley Point is now. And seeing all the trees and everything being washed away was something that I never forgot, and at the time I found quite frightening.
What, whole chunks of land just...
Well, the trees and it was all just getting washed away. They had made an attempt to build a sort of a sea wall out of rock, and in charge of the sea defences at that time was a Mr. Kelting.
Yeah.
And I remember all the farmers when they got together were saying, what's Kelting going to come up with next, because what he's done now hasn't worked. But that was at Hinkley Point.
Yeah. So not the stuff that the Germans...
Not what the Germans did, no.
You said you had 3 of them up here.
We had 3.
You must have been tiny.
I was tiny. Because I was born in 1946, February the 9th, 1946. I was born. My father's brother Joseph was married, and Mrs. Widdicombe, who lived at Wick Park Cottage, died that day.
Oh gosh.
So it was quite a day at Farringdon Hill.
Married to death, that's... Golly. Did they know you were coming on the 9th, or was that a surprise?
I don't know.
And you used to take the sandwiches from where you were saying?
The youngest German, Paul, I used to eat his sandwiches. But I must have been very, very young.
At 18 months? How long were they here?
I'm not quite sure. Hans stayed because he married Iris Selleck, who lived at Wick Park, one of the cottages at Wick Park.
Yeah.
And then he worked for us after the rest had gone back to Germany.
Yeah.
And Paul went back to Western Germany, and the other one, I can't remember his name now, he went back to Eastern Germany. But they were very hard-working people.
Yeah.
And when I was very small, I remember being on a tractor with Hans when he was ploughing. And he said, this bit of this field is the heaviest land on the farm.
Really?
And he was right, it still is. So they're very observant people. I've got a lot of time for the Germans. They think a lot.
Yeah.
And they work hard. So,
where were they billeted?
I think they were billeted at I know where the camp was. I could take you there now.
There was a camp?
There was a camp. Yes, at what's the place called?
At
Goathurst.
Goathurst?
Goathurst, yes.
Gosh, and they came all the way out here to work every day.
I think that was the only camp, so I think they must have been brought over here every day.
Do you remember them arriving?
No, I don't. No. No, I couldn't have been very old.
Well, you can't. I mean, they were repatriated. What, 1948, probably? I mean,
Probably.
You weren't to be more than 2 years old.
Yes.
Did you keep in touch afterwards?
One of them did write to my uncle, wanting an inner tube for his bicycle, but that was the only correspondence there ever was. Bar Hans, who stayed and worked here, and then worked on a farm at Cannington, and then had a bad accident there, and Hinckley started, and he went to work at Hinckley, and that's where I met. That's what the last time I saw Hans was at Hinckley, when he was showing the young farmers around, and it was nice to see him.
Did he recognize?
Oh yes, he recognised me straight away, because he said that he was acclimatised at Hinckley because of working at Farringdon Hill. So yes, I recognised him.
Acclimatised to...
Because it's so cold and windy here, and presumably it's equally cold and windy at Hinckley.
People say there's a Scotsman who walks his dog around who used to work on Hinckley A, and he said the wind was just terrible. But you must have been 20 odd when they started the building.
No.
10 perhaps, was it?
The reservoir was built when I was about 12.
Yeah.
A reservoir was built at Clapworthy, and then a 9-inch water main was brought all the way from Clapworthy to Farringdon Reservoir, and then out to Hinkley Point.
Good Lord.
We had very poor water up until then, because the water supply we had came from a pump at Doddington, which was put in by the Fairfield estate in about, well, up over here in 1909, I'm told. And it went on down to Stolford.
Yeah.
And if people at Stolford were drawing water, we had nothing.
Good Lord.
It was terrible. So a new water main and water pressure, it was just lovely. We just couldn't keep many animals because we had no water.
I was going to say you couldn't, could you?
No.
Could you? So what were you growing then? I mean, were you growing instead of...
Well, we used to grow wheat and barley, and we had quite a lot of sheep, but we only had 18 cows, whereas now we've got about 200 cows.
Would you rather have the cows than...
Oh, we'd rather have the cows, yes. Don't like sheep.
Really? No. What's wrong with sheep?
I just don't like sheep. Cows are more interesting than sheep.
They seem lovely beasts, the cows.
They are lovely beasts, aren't they?
What is it about them?
They're like children, really, aren't they?
Yeah?
It does get... it was very upsetting and annoying when we had some put down with TB.
Yeah.
That is devastating. That's the word. It is absolutely devastating, and it's soul destroying.
Like losing a pet?
Well, it is, yes, because I'm there when they're all born, and it's horrible.
So, I remember someone once saying if you've got livestock, you've always got dead stock.
Yes.
But it doesn't harden you.
That's different.
Yeah.
You accept that some are going to die.
Yeah.
But when they have to be put down for TB, when it could all be stopped, That's the annoying thing. That is what is really annoying. It could be stopped.
Is TB worse now than it was?
Yes. In the Farmers Weekly this week, it was saying how many extra, I think there's about 5,000 more cases this year than last year, on 5,000 farms more.
Good Lord.
And there's about 25,000 more animals than last year slaughtered, or something, I don't know, quite a lot.
And then they burn the carcasses, don't they?
I don't know what they do with
So
the
they're
carcasses.
just...
I don't know. When they've gone from here, they've been loaded into a lorry and just taken away, so we don't know what they do with them.
Pitiful. What was it like when you were little, growing up here? I mean, what?
Lovely.
What did you do?
I used to walk into school. If it was fine, I would walk down the old lane to the village. If it was raining, I would walk down the Stolford direction and get on the bus.
It was a school bus?
The school bus, yes. Mr. Haybiddle's bus. And, yes, I went to Stogursey School until I was 8. And then I went to a little school in at Wemden.
What was Stogursey School like then?
Well, in the first form was Mrs. Hurley, who was a lovely old lady. And the headmaster was Mr. Williams, who didn't seem to like me.
Why not? Well, what made you think he didn't like you?
The first day my brother went to school, he played truant and didn't get to school.
Mm.
The second day he hid away again, but someone saw him, told my father, and I remember walking up through the village and my father's car driving past me. And when I got to school, Mr. Williams was standing at the top of the steps, and he didn't normally stand there.
Yeah.
And it was me he was waiting for, to tell me that I was responsible for getting my brother to school. In future, I'd be in trouble if he didn't get there. I didn't like that.
Good Lord, your little brother, was this?
Yes, oh yes. He never liked school.
So you had to take him every day, mate?
I used to have to push him, all sorts, to get him to go to school.
What did you feel about that?
The same as I feel about him now. I got no time for him.
Did he follow you to Wemden? Or?
And he went to St. Margaret's, which was a school, a very good school in Bridgewater. And then he had to leave St. Margaret's at 11, boys did.
Yeah.
And then he went to Wemden. But we used to cycle up to Keenthorne. And even then, he would get as far as Fiddington and decided he didn't want to go any further. So I would have to push his bike and my bike, and with him between the two front wheels, and push him up over the hill. Otherwise, he would have just cycled home. He was a nightmare. And once I'd left school, I don't think he went to school very much.
How much younger is he than you?
He's 3 years younger than me.
Yeah. Are you the eldest of the...
I'm the eldest.
Yeah. So was it...
I wasn't the first, but I'm the eldest.
Yeah. And were there more siblings after your brother?
I got a sister who was a lot younger.
Yeah. It's a long walk to the school from here.
But Stogursey?
Yeah.
Well, you don't think about it.
Did you go on the footpaths or on the lane?
I didn't go down the footpath. I used to go down the lane sometimes, which was quite interesting, because I could see where the foxes had gone across the road. You could smell where the foxes had gone across the road. Or sometimes I walked down across the fields, and the field nearest the village had never been ploughed, and it had a lot of ant heaps in it. And a 5-year-old trying to jump over ant heaps was not very successful.
Especially not downhill.
No, I kept on falling over, tripping over the additives.
That can't have made you popular once you got to school either, I suppose. Did they mind what sort of state you turned up in?
It was grass, so I didn't. And in any case, it was usually dry because I went the other way.
Yeah.
If it was wet.
How many classrooms were there?
I think there must have been about 4.
Really?
Well, there was Mrs. Hurley's.
Yeah.
It was the first class. The second class. No, it would have been more than that, I would imagine, because there wasn't a secondary school then. And then the main school building was in 2 parts. I suppose there must have been about 4.
So I remember going to a little school in Clapton in Gordana. Much like that, going downhill in the summer.
That's near Bristol?
Yes.
Oh, right.
And because I would have been going to the school the same age, same time as you, because I was born in 46 as well. And I remember going down hills with across the field down to school. It was lovely in summer. How long did it take you?
Well, I don't know. But I could walk up through the village and everyone would say, "Good morning, Roger," and I would know everybody. But now, I would know hardly anyone in the village.
Really?
I hardly ever go in there. My father was a district councillor for donkey's years.
Yeah.
He was the chairman of the council for 18 years. The 18th year, he was about to leave to go into the annual meeting of the parish council. And I said to him, "How many years you've been chairman?" He said, 18. I said, "Don't you dare come home and say you've been chairman, you're chairman again." He said, "They'll propose me." I said, "Don't you dare come home and say you're chairman." And he came home and I said, "Are you chairman?" He said, "They proposed me." I said, "That's not what I asked you." He said, "No, I'm not chairman." I said, "I didn't want to be."
Why did you say don't you dare be chairman?
Well, 18 years is too long.
Yeah.
He gave up all the chairmanships of everything after that, because he was chairman of just about everything.
Too long because you felt he was overdoing things, or?
No, I just thought things needed change.
Yeah.
Just after that, I went into Cannington to B.H. White's and was talking to Mr. White. And I said, "Who's the chairman of Cannington Parish Council?" And he said, "I am." I said, "How long have you been chairman?" He said, 36 years.
Good Lord.
I said, "That's far too long. You should give it up." "No one else can do it by me," he said.
You think it's a sort of case of wanting to control things, do you?
I don't know about control things. I think you're just afraid of giving up. I helped start Cannington Grain. About 6 of us got together to start a cooperative grain store. And I was one of the directors. But when I got voted off, it didn't really matter.
Because it was a cooperative, or because you didn't mind? Or?
No, I didn't mind. Someone else could do things as well as I can.
Yeah. You mentioned cooperatives in your interview with Margaret Healy. You like them a lot? It's unusual to hear anyone. I wonder if it's a generation thing.
Well, when it came to Cannington Grain, the conditions that farms, that wheat and barley were stored on farms was not very good.
Yeah.
And also the merchants, they were buying cheap grain.
Yeah.
They weren't paying as much as they should have been. And also, we'd just gone in the common market and there was intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And to sell wheat into intervention, you had to be able to sell 100 tons. to put it into an intervention store.
Yeah.
And that would be difficult for an individual to organise that and get it there and load it. So a grain store, cooperative grain store, seemed to be the right idea.
Were there lots of small farms then, and have they got bigger, or is it?
No, they've got bigger. There were quite a lot of small farms, and not even the bigger farms didn't have decent grain stores, not really. And the Hinckley Road meant we could get it to Cannington quite well easily. If it weren't for the Hinckley Road, I don't suppose there would be a grain store.
Really? That made a big difference, that would.
And if we had to have a grain store here on the farm with the size of lorries now, and if there were no Hinckley Point Road, how would they ever get here?
I don't know. They'd never get up the lane.
They wouldn't. No.
Because that's some hill.
Yes. Well, the milk tanker gets up, but then it would take the milk tanker would take everything a long time to get here from the old road.
That must have been built within your memory.
Yes, that was built in 1957, the Hinckley Road.
Yeah. What was it like before?
Well, I didn't drive, but it was a nightmare. All twists and turns, and it's no wonder no one much moved into the area. It was not much of an area to move into, really.
Did you think so?
Well, it was all right to live in, but with today's, what would it be like if there weren't Hinckley? What water supply would we have? What road would we have? We would be pretty cut off, I should think. The Stowe Road would be the best road to get here.
Yeah.
Not to get to not to try and get to Cannington. It would be a nightmare.
And yet, I suppose the other side of that is that you do now go into Stogursey and you don't know anybody, or you feel you don't. Or
well, I'm a bit of a recluse, really. They joke when I go past Cannington. Actually, up here, my wife and son, have you got your passport, Dad?
Really? Alone on your hilltop?
I can see it all from here. I don't need to go very far.
You have got the most amazing
It's
view.
panoramic.
Yeah.
How many people can sit there? Well, you can't see it that well now, but you can see the Welsh coast, you can see Breen Down Point, out of that window, and North Hill at Minehead down that way. Dunkery Beacon.
You must have watched all the weathers come and go. Which...
And I can sit here, if you're at the right time, on the right night, actually we're right underneath, well you are as well, right underneath the Skylab.
Yeah.
You've seen it.
Yes. You must get the sunrise and the sunset.
For the first 32 years of my life, I sat down there.
With your back to it.
Back to it.
And your father sat where you sit now.
No, he sat where you sit. Mother sat here.
Oh, right.
So when I got the chance to turn around, I did.
Did you love it when you were little, or just take it for granted?
Took it for granted, I suppose. Lady Gass, when she was a councillor, county councillor, she used to come up and to get us to vote for her, and she used to say, "Well, I do love the view from up here, Roger."
I think the view a little bit further on, as you start down to Stogursey, is one of the most beautiful views.
It is a beautiful view, isn't it?
Ever seen, and quintessential English beauty, isn't it?
Well, in the last few years, we've done a lot of building. We used to be able to stand beside the front yard gate and look across at the Quantocks and see everything. And if you had any problems, it sort of just dissolved away, because you could just stand there and look at the Quantocks and everything and forget everything else. But now we've got to go the other side of the silage pits and the buildings to see the Quantocks now.
Does it make a difference?
Not really.
If you do find you go out there?
No, I think
especially?
when you get the other side now that you appreciate it more.
Yeah. We used to find when we live, where we live now, next to Marion's old house, there isn't really a view. There's one window with a good view to the Quantocks. When we lived in a house before with a stunning view, we found we didn't want to go anywhere. Why should we? Because you'd go to the window or outside and it was just, you couldn't stop looking, could you?
No.
Do you have...
I have a pair of binoculars.
I was going to say, do you have sort of favourite times of the year when things happen that you look forward to in terms of the weather and the because you must see it all coming up the channel.
Yes. But only on one occasion, about 3 or 4 years ago, it said on the news that people had seen one of these whirly things off the channel. Yeah. That morning, we'd seen 5. Just sitting here, I said to Jackie, there's one of those water spouts, or whatever they call it. But there were 5.
And you saw them travelling all?
Yes. One was a biggish one, and the others were just small ones. But,
had you ever seen them before?
No, I'd never seen them before. I'd never looked before. And I've looked since, I've never seen one since.
Can you see the floods when it does flood from here?
We can see, we can see. If we go upstairs, we can see, But I learnt more about the floods at Sherton speaking to John Symes a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know John Symes?
No, I don't.
You don't? He lived at Lower House.
Oh, right, yeah, Lower House.
Yes. And he was able to tell me who'd been flooded and who hadn't. He knew more about what was going on here than I did. He's a superman, but he's not very well. He's having to take an oxygen bottle with him.
Oh, no.
He's 80-something now. But he rings me up every few weeks and has a chat.
What did you do when you were young and the weather was bad? And if you were going on, if it was flooding and you'd have gone on the bus wouldn't have got through, would it? I
remember the only time that I was going to Stogursey School that I remember it flooding, Dorothy Carpenter had to get off the bus at Newnham and it was flooded then, and I remember the bus manoeuvring so that she could get out without getting too wet. I can't quite remember. She must have got wet.
Because that was as far as the bus could go.
Well, the bus went on and on down to Stolford, but I remember the water was up and over the road, and Dorothy was obviously going to get wet, unless she was able to climb into the hedge and go around the fields. I don't know. I remember it was flooded down there then.
Marion told us when we first came that we must expect to be stranded at Newnham sometimes and just wait for the tide.
Yes, but down at Edgware, there was a sluice, and it used to, if they put the sluice down, and the water was directed on down to Sherton Mill.
Yeah.
To Wick Mill, rather. And I suppose 35 years ago, the water burst through the bank before it reached the sluice. So the flooding would be a lot worse at Sherton now if that hadn't happened.
Really?
Mm.
Because the sluice would have held it all back.
The sluice would have held it all back. And we used to keep the sluice down because my father used to rent the fishing out to someone.
The fishing where?
The fishing in the brook.
I see.
From where the sluice is,
Yeah.
which down at Edgware, back up to the Hinkley Point Road. A farmer from Stockland used to rent the fishing.
There was enough fish in it.
Oh, he put a lot of trout in there.
Really?
Mm.
It's got to be quite fast and clear for trout, hasn't it?
I don't know anything about fishing.
Yeah.
I know he grumbled that he didn't catch any trout one year and wanted it. Didn't see that he should pay rent.
Yeah.
And I remember he brought 2 trout up for us. So I made holes in the sluice to let the water down. And he had a new sluice built.
How old were you when you did that? When you made the
Oh,
holes?
about 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like you just thought, I'm going to go and do this.
Yes, I used to just do things.
Did you get on with your father?
He was a very placid man.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in those days.
Oh, he always struck me as very placid and gentle
I
man.
mellowed.
Did it snow much? I mean, getting to school through that? Or just
Not
did you
when I
not
went
bother?
to Stogursey. It did in 1955.
Careful, you'll take it on. Drop it in the tea.
Hello? Yes, but yes, I know, but I'm very busy at the moment. I just cannot stop and speak. Yes, go on. Yeah, but no, you can't do it. I can't tell you why, but you cannot do it. That's all. You may not be here. All right. We are. Yeah.
Hello, it's peaking. I've learned about this stuff then. We send this off to Hinkley C's volunteer programme to get them typed up. And then we're going to, well, we've just got to see what we can see. We've got about 50 names so far.
Well, there was a photograph of me out at Hinkley C, out at Hinkley at the visitor centre.
Yes?
Because Hinkley used to take milk from us for testing. I think they used to take it every fortnight at one time. Now they have it about every 4 months.
Oh, for testing for
Radiation, yes.
Oh, right.
And well, they did a bit of a film up here and took a picture of me. One of the chaps that collected the milk used to say, "Our picture's out there." It was he and I and one of our tractors.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the picture.
Did it bother you when they started to build?
No. There was a lot of noise in those days because the crawlers didn't have turbochargers. So you could hear all the crawler exhaust pipes. You could hear all the noise from the big cats out there.
Good Lord.
But when they built the second station,
Yeah.
there was hardly any noise because all the engines had turbochargers, so they were quieter. And out here in the reservoir, there was a Polish man and his D8 and a scraper. And I used to cycle home from school as fast as I could, change, get out there, sit and watch him. And I thought, sometime he will stop and let me drive it.
And did he?
He did.
Did you have any great friends, or were you a solitary child?
Oh, I had friends, yeah.
Yeah.
One of them was only just who I went to school with at Wemden. He had been milking out here for 24 years on a Saturday. His father was a farmer, and his father died, and they rented their farm, and the owners wanted it back, or they wanted to sell it.
Yeah.
And so he gave up farming, and he went to work in a milk factory for about a week and didn't like it. And so I saw his mother and asked if he could come out to work for me, and she said, "I don't think he want to work for you." But he did. He was going to work full time, but then his cousin came back from New Zealand and didn't have a job. And so he said, "Will you employ my cousin? And I'll do the milking on a Saturday."
Yeah.
So his cousin came out, university educated, and the second, after he'd worked for me for 2 days, he came back the third morning, and I said, asked him what sort of job he was looking for.
Yeah.
He said he was looking for a job as a consultant. And I said, "If I go in and make some telephone calls, will you go along with what I organise?" And he said he would. And by the time he finished work that evening, I had an interview organised for him, and he was shortlisted and got a job with a firm called Promar, and he's been there for the last 24 years.
Gosh.
So if you can help someone, it's nice, isn't it?
But I was already admiring of you for taking on Marion's son.
Oh, it was quite interesting actually, because they were both the same age. Gary, this one I found a job for, and Peter. And Peter had been to Harper Adams, I think it was, and Gary had been to university. Reading. He'd been to Reading.
Yeah.
And Gary could pluck all the figures out of the air. Peter would have to go home and look at his notes and come back and say, "We're doing things wrong because my notes say we should be doing this."
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see the difference in the two of them. But they were both super chaps.
And Peter went on to do sheep, didn't he, after all?
He did call in a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah. Saw the robots.
The robots are astonishing. Could you ever have dreamt that was how the...
No, but I always thought what a good idea it would be, but years ago they couldn't be. We just didn't have the technology that.
Yeah. What appeals to you especially about it?
What, the robots?
Yeah.
Well, getting up and milking is not the nicest of jobs. I mean, it's lovely being with cows, but actually having to milk them some people love it, but it is a tie. And
it's twice a day, isn't it?
And twice a day or 3 times to get the most out of the cows.
Really?
But the robots, the cows like it, I like it. And life is just it's not so stressful.
Yeah. I was wondering if you liked them for the cows' sake or for yours, but it seems to be for both.
Oh, I think it's better for both. The cows are in their environment there. It's just where they live, and they can go and eat, have their back scrubbed with a brush, or be milked whenever they feel like it.
Do they get less comfortable with you because they have less contact with you?
No, we're still out there quite often.
Yeah.
We're just not milking them. No, our cows have always been very quiet, because the old herdsman, he was very quiet. And some cows are not quiet. I've bought cows in, from other people that have not been. You wonder what went wrong for them to be as wild as they are.
Really?
Mm.
I had no idea. I suppose because I don't know them or understand them. And yes, you see bullocks frisking about.
Yes, but no, we bought some when we lost a lot of cows to the TB.
Yeah.
We had to go and buy in a lot, and I bought 18 from one farm.
Mm.
And they just, well, even now we've still got some left, and it doesn't take much to get them very flighty.
Incredible. Do they pass that on to the calves?
I don't know whether they have or not, to be quite honest. But somewhere in their breeding, someone frightened them.
Yeah.
It must have been. I know the owner didn't like cows.
Yeah.
Whether the herdsman mistreated them as well, I don't know, or whether they just didn't come into contact with people very much and were just frightened. I don't know what it was, but we'd never come across animals like it.
Do you raise up your herds from your own calves?
We try to, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I did buy 4 from a farm down near Wellington, and they were just the same. They were wild as well.
Really?
Mm. I didn't like the man. Wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if he didn't upset them.
Does the robot system settle them down at all if they're wild, do you think? Or they're still...
Yeah, I think it probably does. Because if they're wild and you're trying to milk them,
Yeah.
they know that you're getting upset,
Yeah.
and they can sense that. All animals can sense what humans are like, can't they?
Yes.
And the cow's no different. But with the robot, everything's the same all the time.
Almost on equal terms, aren't they, with you?
Yeah.
Did you always know you were going to take on the farm? Or did it...
Oh, yes.
Did your parents say, or did you just... was there any pressure on you that you had to inherit? Or
No. No, I never thought my father was a very good farmer.
did you not?
No. And the more I took on, the more often he went off to meetings. That's where he got his satisfaction.
See, yes.
Not just evening meetings, he then started going to day meetings as well.
So how come he was a farmer in the first place? Was your grandfather a farmer?
Yes, he lived at what was called Gill's Farm, which is was just down the road from you, where the 4 bungalows are. Yes. He lived there. His father before him lived there. My great-grandfather lived there. When my great-grandfather was living there, my grandfather was living the field behind. Is it the field behind your place and Marion's?
Yes, that's Davina's now. Oh, you mean behind on this side?
Behind your garden, down to the...
Towards Hinckley?
Towards Hinckley.
Yeah.
Over the other side of the brook.
Yeah.
There were 2 or 3 cottages there, corner cottages they were called.
Really?
And that's where my father was born. And that's where he lived until my great-grandfather died. Then they moved into Gill's Farm, which they only rented.
Yeah.
Then they came up here in 1939.
So
But my grandfather, you see, there was my grandfather and his brother and his 3 sons. So grandfather was also a tax collector. And I've got a book home here of all the taxes he used to collect from different people.
actually go round and... Because then I suppose in those days he would have actually gone round on his horse, I suppose.
I suppose.
Or foot.
I don't know whether he was a horseman or not,
Yeah.
but he used to go round and collect all the taxes, so I know exactly who paid what taxes.
How fascinating. The Stogursey taxes, were they all the stuff?
Stogursey, Sherton and Burton, fair area he used to cover.
Amazing.
Wonder who would like that book. We've got it stored away here somewhere.
Yeah, you don't know where. Or you'd have to hunt.
Jackie wouldn't know. She stacks things away. I don't know where she puts it.
So when was Gill's farm? Because there were orchards down there, weren't
There was
there?
an orchard behind Gill's farm, yes.
Yeah. When did all that go?
Oh, 40 years ago, I suppose. Might be more. Yeah. About 40 years ago, I suppose.
Was it,
Well, so Mr. Hunt, who used to live out at Kilton, Mr. Stan Hunt, and his brother, half-brother, they bought Bishop's Farm. They rented 500 acres from the Luttrell estate. Well, Mr. Hunt's son, Ivan, still farms out there. And they bought this Bishop's down here, and they sold off the Gill's Farm for a building. And he was quite a good businessman, Mr. Hunt. Very shrewd man, I should think.
Shrewd, yeah.
And his daughter lives up the road from you in the bungalow just past, who lives in the house on the left-hand side?
The
Farmery.
Farmers?
In the next bungalow from Farmery.
Well, that's Mr. Hunt's daughter.
That's Mr. Hunt's daughter. I don't know her.
Isn't she married to
She's married to Clifford Burge, isn't she?
Right, I thought it was Clifford Jones.
Oh, Clifford Jones. No, that's he lives further up than me.
Oh, I see. There's an awful lot I don't know. With the shirt and clothes.
Well, I've never seen this woman to speak to.
Yeah.
It's just that I was driving through Shirton one day and she was standing outside and she did put her hand up, because I used to go into the next bungalow on, because I used to rent some ground from the people who owned the next bungalow, Miss Pierce. Did you know Miss Pierce?
No.
You didn't? Miss Pierce, she was a lovely old lady, but she had a deformed arm and shoulder. I can't remember which one, and she walked with a stoop and had a hump on her back. And she had TB when she was young.
And that caused
they used to farm at Stolford.
Yeah.
They bought a farm at Stolford. There was no National Health Service. And to pay for her treatment, they sold the farm.
Glory. What a burden to carry. It was quite rife in those days, wasn't it? Before the war.
And the other thing I remember, when I was walking to school, was the lovely smell of bread from the baker's shop. And a few years back, when they were talking about developing Boltsfield at Longley, or whatever they call it down there.
Longley Meadows.
Yes, it was up in the village hall was a presentation of what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And a woman came up and she said, "Are you Roger Jones?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "I'm Pauline." And she said, I said, "Oh, your father used to make the bread." And she said, "Yes." I said, "I used to feel so sorry for him, for that chronic arthritis that he used to have." She said, "It wasn't arthritis." I said, "Well, what was it then?" She said, "It was TB."
Good Lord.
It is an awful disease.
I didn't realise it deformed your bones. Good Lord.
That's why it really does annoy me when they want to protect the badgers, when they're protecting something which is passing an awful disease.
They're going to cull now, though, aren't they?
Yeah, but it's not very many, is it? It's
I
not a
don't
very
know, I
big
haven't
area.
found it.
It's and they say it'll only reduce it by 16%. It will reduce it by 96%. What better place is there to pass it from one badger to another than living underground for 18 hours a day, breathing in the same air?
Yeah.
And we're told by DEFRA that if we find a dead badger, to have a dust mask and gloves not to touch them.
Good Lord.
So everyone knows what they're like.
That nobody dares say so out loud.
No.
Well, they say, or it's been suggested, that that's why the hedgehogs are dying.
Yes, I think it is. I used to love seeing hedgehogs.
I've only once or twice seen one, and I'd love to adopt one, but you can't if you've got budgets.
No. I was driving along the Hinkley Point Road one day with a tractor, and there was a hedgehog on the side of the road, and I thought, he's dead. And I thought, no, I don't think he is. I stopped, and he was badly injured. All his spikes, prickles were broken off on one side, and he was all lopsided. And he didn't curl up. And I thought, you're alive, aren't you? And I picked him up. And he didn't curl up, and I brought him home.
Yeah.
But he was alive, and we kept him here, and we nursed him back to health.
How wonderful.
And another one we found, I backed a tractor out of a shed, and there were 3 little baby hedgehogs. And one I'd run over, and there were 2 more. And I picked them up, and I didn't know what to do with them. So I brought them indoors, and one weighed, I think it was 60 grams, and the other weighed 70 grams. And the 70-gram one died. And we rang up the RSPCA and different ones to see how should we nurse them.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you mustn't give them cow's milk. You must do this and you must do that. But Jackie, she decided she would have a syringe, and she would squirt a little drop of cow's milk in there. And the 60-gram one went down to 50 grams, and we thought we were going to lose him.
Yeah.
But then he started putting on a bit of weight, and then he doubled his weight in no time. And I used to get him up, put him on the kitchen table and breakfast table, and he used to crawl around the table, and we kept him until he was fully grown. And I used to let him out for a walk at night. And then one night I thought, right, this is the last time. I'm not going to bring you back in.
Yeah.
And I've never seen him again, but yeah.
Did you put out food for them as well? Did they come in the night?
They used to. Other wild ones, we used to put food out, because you could hear them out rattling the dogs' bowls. But it's all gone.
That is really sad. Do you notice it with the slugs and snails and things, that there are more of them, as there are fewer hedgehogs?
Well, there are a lot of slugs. We have got a massive number of snails when you think about it. We have. There's no doubt about that.
How heavy are they when they're fully grown?
I don't know.
You didn't weigh.
No, we didn't keep weighing him. No. I used to like seeing hedgehogs.
You used to see them a lot?
Yeah, quite often. Well, you just don't ever see them now, do you? You don't even see them run over anymore, do you? There are quite a number around Cannington, though. I have seen them crossing the road in Cannington.
Do you find that overall the wildlife is less than it used to be?
Yes. And I think the people that released the mink were guilty of a very big crime there, because you could go from roughly by the church right down to Wick, and you would see no end of moorhens. There are no moorhens now.
True.
And I'm sure that's the mink. There's one moorhen, and she's not on the brook. She's up here in my dirty water pit. We've got a big pit for all our dirty water.
Yeah.
And for 2 or 3 years, I've seen her, but I haven't seen any young. But last year, I went up and looked, and she was in there with 6. And we've seen ducks for a number of years. The ducks would come up, and we never saw them with any young. But last year, one duck had 7, and one had, and a second one had 3.
And they come up to your pond.
They're up on our dirty water pit. And they go all over the slurry pit, picking up everything that's, all the things that you say they say that you must keep away from the sides of ditches and things.
Yeah.
That's what they're all up there, getting all the goodness out of there. And the other thing I noticed last year when I was on the silage pit, rolling the silage, the wind was coming from a southeast direction.
Yeah.
Not a strong wind, just a bit of a wind. And the swallows were coming into that pit. It's a fair sized area, mind. And sort of, I thought, well, they're coming down and picking up flies. And I thought, no, they're not. They were coming in and they were hitting the water and bouncing off again. And there were a number of them doing it.
Yeah.
I think, well, they were just enjoying themselves.
Like bouncing bombs.
Yeah, they were just bouncing off the water. Quite amazing it was to watch.
I wonder if it was a form of washing.
I'm wondering whether they were washing themselves.
Yeah.
You get all these people who are experts who don't really know much about anything.
That must be very frustrating.
I've read in the Farmer's Weekly once that if you plough a field, you kill half the worms.
Yeah.
I was ploughing a field one day, turned at the headland and went back down through, but some of the ploughing had tipped back over and it had tipped on 2 seagulls. So I got off the tractor, and they were the big heron gulls, and they had regurgitated all the worms that they'd eaten. And each one, I should think, if you put cupped hands like that, that's how many worms each one had picked up.
But there are flocks of them.
There were hundreds of seagulls there.
Yeah.
That's where all the worms were going. It's not the farmer that was killing them by ploughing.
Yeah.
It was the seagulls.
And you must get loads up here.
Well, you don't anymore.
Really?
No, you used to get black-headed gulls. I haven't seen any black-headed gulls for years now. The other thing is, buzzards are protected.
Yeah.
But the hare population's gone down. So I think the buzzards are probably picking up the leverets. The other thing that I've seen buzzards do is pick up rats. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you get buzzards in the field when you're ploughing, you don't get seagulls. So they're protecting the worms. So they're protecting the worms and they're getting rid of the rats.
But the hares, they're a loss.
But the hares, that is a loss.
I've seen 1 or 2. I remember.
Yes, I saw one the other day.
Used there to be, I mean, were they a feature, the hares?
Well, there used to be a lot more, but then there was the gypsy camp down the road.
Yeah.
And it was nothing unusual to see 5 or 6 chaps out with 5 or 6 dogs. And they were, and you daren't say anything to them.
No, well, they've been a trouble.
They were a nightmare. And they covered such huge areas. Just after hares.
When did that camp start?
About 1961, I suppose.
As an official camp? Or
No, it wasn't an official camp then. The field came up for sale.
Yeah.
Neighbours of ours sold it. And my father came out and he said, "Oh, Doug Coles has bought that field. He's going to plant peas down there." I said, "Don't be so stupid." I said, "Don't grow peas on this ground." I said, "He's going to put a gypsy camp down there." I said, "Get in and offer more money." So he went in and made an offer. And they said, "No, it's sold." Which was, seeing that it was a neighbour,
Yeah.
I didn't think too much of that.
You'd have thought they'd have come to you, wouldn't you?
Mm.
But then you can never tell with neighbours.
No. So then he put gypsies down there, and then it was bought by the council as a permanent camp. So, and there were some rough ones down there, because the council, in their wisdom, told them that there were 12 sites,
Yeah.
12 standings. They could each have a horse. Well, how can you keep 12 horses in an 8-acre field?
No. How much does each horse need? Do you reckon?
Acre or 2.
Yeah. Because you've got a horse, haven't you?
Hmm?
Isn't that your horse?
Oh,
the
my
white-
wife's
the
horse.
grey?
She hadn't ridden it for years. I think he's lame.
And you have to keep moving them, don't you, horses?
Yeah.
Because they acid the ground.
They don't do much good, I don't think. I don't like horses.
No sheep, no horses.
Hmm?
No sheep, no
horse,
horses.
no.
Did you always know it was cows?
Yes. It's the only way to make money.
What's that? Do you still plough and do you still grow as well as...
Oh yeah, we still
okay.
grow about 140 acres of wheat.
Gosh.
But we didn't get any in at all last year.
Well, no. Last year must have been dreadful.
We should have got 2 fields in, and I told my son to get on and get them in, but he decided to go ploughing and not drilling, and so they didn't get put in. So he has to learn by his mistakes.
Just the one son?
Just the one son.
Yeah. And he'll take on the farm, you think?
I let him run it now if I can.
Yeah.
Because what's the point in having a son, teaching him all you know, if you're not going to let them make some decisions?
Yeah.
Pointless, isn't it? You've got to be realistic about things. They're going to take on one day in any case, and the younger they take on, the more prepared they will be. And he still does listen. Just takes a bit of swallowing, doesn't it?
Did he go to Stogursey School as well?
No. He's very dyslexic.
No.
He went to Cannington for a short while, and they didn't teach him anything there. He went to the St Margaret's, but only it closed down shortly afterwards. Then he went to King's Hall, and the teacher there, the headmistress, said he's got a learning problem, and Jackie said, I think he's dyslexic. She said, oh no, there isn't such a thing, the headmistress said. And Jackie said, well, you don't mind then if I take him to a specialist at, I think it was at Ilminster. And she did, and this man said that he had a very high IQ, but he is very dyslexic. So then they knew what was wrong with me.
Are you dyslexic too?
I'm dyslexic. And
nobody knew about it then?
No. No. And anyway, she got a report about it from this specialist. She showed it to the headmistress at King's Hall, and she said, then we've got quite a number of them.
Really? And yet she'd said that there wasn't
such a thing.
Wasn't such a thing?
And then they started putting on special classes for dyslexic people.
It makes a big difference.
It does make a big difference. Because there's ever just a lot of dyslexic people.
There are, yes. I used to teach, and I remember one little chap, a 5-year-old or something, he was watching a television programme, and he turned around and said to his mother, and says, Mum, I think I'm dyslexic. And he was. But no one had even considered it until he picked up on it himself.
You write things down, and you write them down in the wrong order.
Yeah.
You just can't help it. Even when you read it back, you still read it and can't see you've made a mistake. And you have to think about things a bit more. You can't get up and argue. I don't think you can't argue because you don't always put the right words in the right, and things don't come to you as fluently as they do other people, I think. I always have to do a lot of thinking, listen and then think before you can put a proper argument forward.
It must have been, and to find out that your son was dyslexic, and until then you must have thought, in some ways, it's my fault.
Well, we were a bit worried because he didn't have much to say for himself.
Yeah.
Bradley took after me.
But how did you feel when you realised that you were dyslexic too? Because you wouldn't have realised till you learned about him.
No, but it did answer a lot of questions.
Yeah.
No wonder I got shouted at so much at school.
But what a way to grow up then, you know, that Nowadays, people would be horrified, wouldn't they? They would think a child growing up with this burden of feeling inadequate or incapable in terms of school.
Well, you compensate, don't you? You do things to compensate. It's like if you lose your hand or arm, I suppose you do things to compensate and you don't really notice, do you?
But it's still hard work, isn't it?
Mm. Mind over matter.
Yeah, you believe in it?
Oh, I believe in mind over matter, yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to worry about things.
For a farmer, that is quite
It is
must
difficult.
be an accomplishment.
Well, worrying doesn't help you, does it? Or worrying makes you ill.
Yeah, it does, because if you can't fix it, you've pretty much got to accept it.
I haven't got much patience with people either.
Their cattle are better.
Yeah, you can talk to them and they listen to it.
Yeah.
And they don't answer back.
And the weather and the view. I was really struck in your interview with Margaret Healy how your love of the landscape came through. I just thought, what a lovely person.
Well, I spent all my life trying to improve the soil on this farm. And I don't know if you watch Country File.
No, we haven't got to.
Of course you haven't.
Yeah.
Prince Charles was on the other day.
Yeah.
And he didn't do himself any harm at all. I was told by someone who did a point-to-point,
Yeah.
and Prince Charles was point-to-pointing as well, and they said he is an absolutely super chap.
I've always liked him.
And he didn't do himself any harm at all.
Yeah.
He came over ever so well. And a lot of his ideas or his views on things, they mirror my views as well.
To care for the land
Mm.
and care for the future thereby.
Well, I try to pass it on
Yeah.
better than it was when I came.
Yeah.
But not many people do they? Everyone is grab, grab, grab.
I suppose you're right. Yes. Yes, I hadn't. So it must have frustrated you to see your father.
Well, he loved the
No.
farm.
Yeah.
I think money frightened him, because you're talking
Yeah.
of big money when you're farming.
Yeah.
And I don't think he could cope with that.
So what have you done to improve the farm and the soil?
Well, the buildings are now good. When
Yeah.
I left school, I thought they were absolutely terrible. I thought no one had worse buildings than we did.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Some did, I suppose. But
Yeah.
And I just felt I got to put it right. And I did. And I have. And when Peter Calloway came up a few months ago,
Yeah.
I said to him, he's knocked down part of the old stone barn, Peter. He said, well, that's all that's left to knock down. You knocked all the rest down.
Were you doing that when Peter was coming up at weekends?
Oh, over the years we've knocked down one building and another building, and the last little bit's got to come down this year.
Yeah. And what are you going to put in its place?
Better facilities for animals.
Yeah.
It's no good having buildings which have been redundant or useless for 60 odd years, because a lot of these old stone barns, I know you can convert them into houses, but when you're in the middle of a farmyard, they're just wasting space. They weren't built to last forever, were they?
No.
And times have changed.
Do you still hedge and cut and lay?
Oh, I
And
haven't
do
done.
you leave
We-
sort of wildlife strips and that sort of thing as well?
We've got wildlife strips,
Yeah.
and we're going to leave some other ones. But I haven't got any hedges to lay now.
Yeah.
We did years ago. Had to lay ever such a lot of hedges. But we had no option. They were overgrown and they had to be laid. Because when they came up here in 1939, they sold 400 elm trees.
Sold them?
There were 400 elm trees that they sold then.
Good
And
Lord.
we had a lot cut down after that. There were no end of elm trees. The area was all up through Shirton, apparently there were elm trees.
So I'm told. So Marion said. Must have been lovely.
Must have been. They weren't there in Marion's time, surely. Well, no, I don't think they.
What about when elm disease took hold then?
And then, well, there were 32 elm trees in a hedge from the old lane down to the village, along there, and down to the wood.
Yeah.
We didn't have a view then like we got now. Didn't matter perhaps that I didn't sit here. And you couldn't see Shirton for elm trees, for all the elm trees that were down there. That had affected the landscape. There aren't the owls that there were, because I used to live in the hollows in elm trees.
Yeah.
Little owls.
And now the ashes.
Now the
Under
ashes.
threat.
Mm.
Do you plant to replace?
No, I haven't
Or
actually.
just- Must be quite difficult for a tree to get hold up here with the
Well, one of
wind.
yes, it is. The other problem is if you've got tall trees in a hedge and the branches catch the combine harvester
Yeah.
and nothing grows either side of the tree, you get dead patches and the animals get out through there.
Mm.
I think it's better to have clumps of trees really than odd trees in a hedge.
Yeah. Copses and that sort of
Mm.
thing. Yeah. Have you got copses?
We've got 1.5 acres down there.
Mm.
We've never done anything to it. We did have elm trees cut down and the elm disease struck. But that was called a plantation. It's called Farringdon Plantation.
Yeah.
And this side of Farringdon Plantation was the orchard. Well, I think the plantation was planted to protect the orchard.
I see. Yeah.
That's
From the wind?
From
or-
the wind,
Yeah.
I would imagine. And that would have been done by the Fairfield Estate, because it was a Fairfield Estate farm.
This farm?
This was, yes. All the land from here right down to Steert was
Really?
bar Stockton Level Manor,
Yeah.
and 1 or 2 farms at Stolford. They belong to the merchant venturers.
Really? What, the Bristol merchant venturers?
Mm.
I suppose, yes, they would. So,
Because Anne Sparks,
yeah.
she wrote in the newsletter some time ago that Wick Farm was, I don't know how big, ever so big, and the merchant venturers or something, but I think she got it wrong. I think it was all the land that went with the merchant venturers. It was probably about 1,400 acres, I think she was saying, or 1,300 acres. I think it was not Wick Farm, but all the farms. And I'm not sure how many farms it was. Whether it was White Wick, I'm not sure about White Wick Farm. And Stolford Farm, and Wick Farm, I expect, and Stockton Level Manor.
Must be one of the few people I know who does actually read the Stogursey News. An awful lot of people say, just look at it and drop it.
No, the only things I do that to is when the Jehovah's Witnesses come round and stick their things in the letterbox.
Yeah.
That goes straight in the bin.
So your grandfather rented Gill's farm, and then did he buy this farm?
Yeah, they bought this farm. Because
From
every year...
the Fairfield estate?
No.
Oh.
They bought this from a Mr. Silk. Mr. Silk's father, I think, had been a tenant of Fairfield.
Yeah.
And then I think he bought it. And then Mr. Silk, presumably, his name was Trumpy Silk, so presumably he had a big nose or something. And his sister lived up here. And then they must have sold it in 1939. And in Cannington Church, there's a plaque about the Silk family, so
Oh, really?
it is a local name. And Mr. Jeans came up here one day, and because they used to farm at, well, they still do farm at Currypool Farm, but that's David Jeans now. His father came here and he said, when we used to come here when Mr. Silk was here, Roger, he said there would be a bag outside the door and you had to wipe your boots before you went in the barn. He said this was the barn in the area, but it had been rebuilt in about 1913, I think it was. There had been big improvements made to it.
Yeah.
So they were neat and tidy then. Now that part of the barn is no longer.
One of the bits you pulled down.
Tom pulled that down. 1834 it was built.
Really?
It was, we found a piece of wood with it in the roof. I think it was 1834.
Queen Victoria.
I thought I'd miss it, but I didn't.
When did Tom pull it down?
About a year ago.
It's funny, isn't it? You hang on to all sorts of things and then they're gone. And they're gone.
They're gone.
And life goes on.
Well, that area now is more use than it was.
Yeah. Does Tom have visions for the future of the farm? He wants to go on.
Yeah, increase the cow numbers, increase the yields, improve the land.
What happened to the solar farm people? Did they go away and stay away? Or?
They were going to put solar panels up here, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
But once the tariff had been cut,
See?
I think Dyer's at Cannington, I think they had one put up. Theirs was put up. And a woman we know down at Taunton, hers was finished in time.
Yeah.
But ours would have been, but instead of on their plan just putting the small area that we had in, they put an area down below the two bungalows, on across the field, down across the middle of the wood, back across the next field, and filling in the whole area, taking in the whole area of the farm buildings.
Good God.
And we said, well, it's not that where that red line is, it's where our red line is.
Yeah.
In time all that had gone back through their solicitors and our solicitors. Then time just went past, and because they've sold, I think that firm has sold that business or whatever they had.
Yeah.
The rights to keep their panels on the farms. I think they've sold it to someone else. Well, you don't know what someone else would have done. Couldn't let them get away with that.
No. Do you mind?
Well, it would have been nice to have had 50 kilowatts of cheap electric for those robots, because they do use a lot.
Oh my God, yes.
Especially now there's 3 of them.
That must be quite an item.
It is quite an item.
How much do they use each robot?
I don't know what they use. I don't look at the electricity bill. My wife just grumbles about it.
So what would you do if there were blackouts?
Oh, we got a generator.
Oh, I see.
We got one that cuts in the moment the electric goes. It cuts in, which annoys Jackie because she can hear the generator going.
Yeah.
But I haven't got it connected up to the house.
Of course,
So
that's
she
right.
sits here in the dark and the generator's going up, producing electric for the cows.
You get many cuts?
Same number as you, I expect.
You don't get many. We get sort of
Short ones.
odd, short
And that's
ones.
usually when something is flown into the wires.
Oh, really?
Mm.
I always thought it was a blip at B station, but
No, it's
not.
it used to be, if something flew into the wires, it used to put it down for a long time. But now there's some command centre, I think it's in Cardiff or somewhere, and they know instantly, and it comes back on quite quickly. And it is when swans or something hit the wires, I think.
Yeah.
Because normally if they're going to turn the electric off, they tell you, don't they?
Yes, they do, and that doesn't happen very often.
No, that doesn't happen very often.
So we are completely electricity dependent now, aren't we? And yet there can't have been much when you were first here, can there?
No, we had a generator.
Yeah.
They only put electric up here to put arc lights going and drive concrete mixers for the reservoir. So that's how we got Mains Electric.
What about mains water?
Well, the Mains
Oh, yes,
water
you said
was,
it was down. There was a pump installed.
well, at Doddington, yeah.
Yeah.
Fairfield Estate put that in. The, at the time, Fairfield Estate had the pump up there, and not far away from there they had their copper mine.
There was a copper mine at Doddington.
Yes. The old building that housed the shaft is still,
Yeah.
I think it's still standing.
There is a building sort of all on its own in
In
the
a
middle
field?
of, yes.
Yes,
That's
that's it. Mm.
How much copper did they get?
I don't know, but I haven't got a clue.
Quite mineral rich, this land, isn't it, with the oil at
Down at East Quantock, West Quantock there.
yeah.
East Quantock there. Yes, East Quantock there, isn't it? Yes, it's not a bad little area really, is it, the Quantock Vale area?
I think it's lovely.
I went to Scotland back a few years ago and we visited a brewery. Now I
Yeah.
cannot drink whiskey.
Yeah.
Even when I watered it right down, I still couldn't drink it.
Yeah.
But I was talking to the owner of this brewery. It was near Fort William. And he said, "Where'd you come from?" I said, "Well, all the rest of the coach load come from Devon."
Yeah.
I said, "But I'm from Somerset." "Whereabouts in Somerset?" I said, "Well, near Hinkley Point Nuclear Power Station." "Oh," he said, "along by those lovely Quantock Hills." And I said, "You think our hills are lovely?" I said, "But you've got all these hills up here." He said, "I know, but the Quantocks are lovely, aren't they?" I said, "How do you know the Quantocks?" He said, "My daughter worked at, or was working with horses at a place down at Porlock,
Yeah.
where my wife worked down there at one time as well, or was a student down there." He said, "And we used to drive along the A39 by those lovely Quantock hills." He said, "We loved it." So got back on the coach and I was able to say about how we liked the Quantocks. And
Yeah.
how do you know? I said, "And his daughter might be in our Olympic team because she's a very good horse rider."
And was she?
I can't remember her name, so I don't know. He said she was very good.
Yeah. It was the same stables that your wife went to.
It was the same place,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know, there were big stables. I suppose there are horses everywhere around here, aren't there?
But they did train people in horse management. I don't know if it's still going or not.
Yeah.
I haven't got a clue. Shouldn't imagine so. Well, it wasn't that long ago. Oh, maybe, I don't know. It was a long time ago my wife was there, but it wasn't long ago
Yeah.
that his daughter was there, so I don't know.
Whenever I walk out of the house and start off towards Willerton, I just think, this is just stunning. There's something about it. Do you think it's because it's the countryside you know?
Well, it's not too rural, is it? It's not right out in the middle of nowhere, is it?
Yeah.
It's just far enough, isn't it?
Yeah. I like it because it's not pretty.
No, it's not pretty, is it? In fact, if you go on the steamer from Ilfracombe
Yeah.
back to Minehead, or if you went further on back down to Parrot, I mean, the North Devon coast up to Minehead is beautiful.
Yes.
But this bit from Minehead down to Steer, there's nothing to look at, is it?
Except right on the coast. I love Shirton Bars.
I haven't been out to Shirton Bars for 55 years.
Really? You never went there as a child?
I did as a child,
Yeah.
but then 55 years ago, that still leaves quite a bit of space.
It's funny, isn't it, how one does stay in one's own very small patch unless something takes you out of it for some reason.
Because one of our workmen used to go congealing, so I thought I'd investigate the rocks for congeals, but you've got to know something about it, and I didn't know anything about it.
Not one of the Germans.
No, not one of the Germans, no.
May I précis your story about the Germans for the Stogursey News? Because it's good to have a follow-up from the photo to the story. It'd be nice if people could see that there was a follow-on. I won't take it off this. This is for something else. I'm wondering if I've taken your time long enough, Roger. I've been here plenty long.
Oh, yeah, time has gone on, isn't it?
Yeah. I was expecting these batteries to give up because they did last time. But I must have charged them properly. So I guess we're okay. I wondered if once I'd done all the stuff I've got to do with it, download